switching gears to another switch hitting catcher with a lot of similarities to Cal, but key differences as well. And that's Caden Bodine from Coastal Carolina. 25 wins in a row for Coastal Carolina. One of the favorites to potentially win it all in Omaha. Really, really fun team to watch. And this is the star of the show with Caden Bodine. But man, switch hitter, like we said, I thought he was a big bodied catcher just looking at him. And you look at the stats, he's 200 pounds, which that's for an amateur, that's good size, right? I mean, Raleigh's going to be on the extreme end at 235, but clearly has more weight on him than Bodine. You look at Bodine's stats, the bat to ball, outstanding. The overall hitting, outstanding. Not as much power as Raleigh. 5 home runs this year, 9 last year. So that'd be a key difference in the profile. But when you look at what this guy does in the zone, this is according to Baseball America. I could not believe this when I read it. Of the more than 200 pitches Bodine swung at in the strike zone this year, he swung and missed just 8 times, according to Synergy Sports. I mean, insane ability to put the bat on the ball. They got a 60 grade on the hit there. Defense is there. Plus, 55 field, 55 arm, according to Baseball America. And of course, he's produced at the college level. So a guy like this, where it's almost the reverse of Bodine, you're saying, all right, the reverse of Cal, where you say he's got the power. If the hit catches up, this guy's going to be a monster. With Bodine, you're saying he's got the hit. Now, can we get more power out of him?
Sure.
So how do you assess a guy like Bodine?
I think he will be an attractive entity at the draft, especially because if you look at Coastal Carolina, and this is no disrespect to the rest of their team, but I can see how a team overperforms with a player like Caden Bodine as their kind of a key cornerstone piece, like a double contributor. Somebody's contributing at a high level defensively, offensively, and navigating your pitching staff too. That's why if you did fantasy drafts from a GM perspective and you had some of the best catchers out there available, you might, Bobby Witt might go first, like Otani, like these elite bats, but then you'd go to, like, if there's an elite catcher that's stacking up value all over the field, what that does to your overall outlook, especially from your pitchers and stuff.
Let me ask you about this, because this is something I've always wondered. WAR is obviously a great innovation. Mm-hmm. It seems to me, just looking at it, I expect catchers to be higher than they are sometimes in terms of the WAR. You look at some players that have been part of a lot of winning, and their WAR is good, but it's not like outstanding. Raleigh, of course, with the way he's hitting is an exception, but a lot of times it seems like it almost underrepresents how important catchers are. And then when you look at some of the great teams, we talked about Buster Posey in that dynasty. He was the best player, one of the best players. It seems, aside from the Astros, right, who got by with other players and good defensive catcher, it seems like the truly great baseball teams of the last, at least in my lifetime, the catcher is one of the best players on the team, not just serviceable, but one of the best players on a team with a lot of good players. Do you think there's a kind of intangible value to having your catcher be one of your legitimate best players on the team?
I think absolutely. I don't think it's a non-negotiable. And I think that guys could be defensive pitcher, handler specialists and still contribute. You don't need to be a total contribution player, but I think the catching position is valued by any team that's winning. Like we talk about the Dodgers, and we talk about a lot of different players. An incredibly stable piece for them has been this Will Smith, and even before he got released or let go, Austin Barnes. That was a pretty stable part of their run. And even the Astros, kept signing Martin Maldonado back in these like small deals because of how they valued what he did. So even teams that are more analytically driven, still you can't get around valuing this position because it affects every pitch on both sides of the ball. Like at least when you're on defense, you're impacting pitchers, you're guiding pitchers, you're also preparing with your starting pitcher. You have an advance meeting on that day, like the starting catcher, the pitcher, your pitching coach, and he's in that. So he's in the mix on everything. And he's also kind of has to be an armchair psychologist for your pitching staff, a confidence booster for your pitching staff, keeping a pitcher on track, right? Like sometimes they're calling the game. So game calling is a whole other component to this that you can be really, you can move the needle a lot if a pitcher believes in you as a game caller. I've seen that said countless times, right? Sandy Leon, I don't know if you remember that name, but Sandy Leon was Chris Sale's go-to. Like he had to be catching when Chris Sale was pitching, and there was no disrespect to Christian Vasquez, who was exceptional himself. But a pitcher can get into a place where he believes that that's the guy guiding me through the game. And it's because of this guidance that I can be at my best. And so to answer your question, the value of this catcher position is tremendous. And I think it goes higher the more the more wins and the more the team is a winning team, the more they appreciate the value of truly good, impactful catching. And then if that guy is also producing offensively, then you're cooking with gas. That's a cornerstone player for your franchise. But,
yeah, like the multiple time champions. You had obviously Posada with the Yankees,
Varitek with the Red Sox,
Varitek with the Red Sox, Posey with the
Posey's
Giants.
a great one.
I mean, you cannot separate him from their continued success. So you mentioned Will Smith as well.
with the Cardinals.
Molina with the Cardinals. That's
another elite one. And I think that there's a theme here. Now, you don't have to build it that way, but I think if you ask a pitching coach especially, or if you ask a manager, like they're gonna point to that catcher as an extension of them as a staff. Hard to have young players in that position too, because it's a lot of expectations for a young player. So if you have a young catcher, you usually see a tandem with a more seasoned veteran guy. And a lot of those guys end up staying. I remember Jeff Mathis, for example, had jobs for his entire career because he had in spades the pitch calling, the defense. So like you need it in some capacity, and it's valued extremely highly. Sometimes overvalued, I think, but it's kind of hard with the names we just listed not to feel like that's a big part of all these. And go to any major dynasty or important organization, they probably have stability at the catcher position.
Well, obviously I'm a Marlins fan, so I always think of things in terms of the Marlins.
Yep.
If you really the narrative about the early 2000s Marlins is there was a quick fire sale after you won that 2003 championship, but that's actually not true. If you look at the 2004 Marlins, they are in many ways, at least to start the season, more talented or as talented as the team that they replaced. Now you lose Derek Lee, which ended up being a much better player on other teams than he was for us. But you had Cabrera blowing up. You had AJ Burnett coming back. You had Pavano really jumping to another level. There was a lot of talent on that team, but the loss of a Pudge, even in his diminished state, it seemed like it was more than just the production you got. It was like the confidence that he put into the whole team, right? Is there something to that? Just you get a little pep in your step and some confidence when you know the guy that's really controlling the game is someone that you trust wholeheartedly.
I'm going to shamelessly plug Legends of Dade and Giancarlo in this because we've now had two people that were within that clubhouse. So Mike Lowell, I asked him what was different about this 03 team, and he said Pudge. He didn't even hesitate. He's like, Pudge just brought a different level of accountability of everything. And so that's a guy in it that has won elsewhere, identifying that as a major key piece. And I think even Mike Lowell, to his Red Sox championships, will point to Varitek in a lot of these ways as well. But then we asked, to shout out Juice Tandrone, who was the, longtime barber for the Marlins that was around during that time. We asked him what was different about that 2003 season. He didn't even hesitate. He said Pudge, and he listed and elaborated why. Just a different presence, a different something. So I think it's yes, this position is most well positioned to impact like a clubhouse at large. And when you come across it, you realize just how important. And Pudge, it's a Hall of Fame presence, a Hall of Fame entity. And so I think that 2003 Marlins example is a really appropriate one to spotlight the importance of the catcher position for sure.
Going back to Bodine here from J24, noting that Bodine's allowed the fewest stolen base attempts in the Sun Belt Conference games on top of what he does with the bat. So really an interesting player. And I don't know if you've had a chance to just see the swing and everything else, but again, I kind of go into what we talked about. Like, and this is how you started the conversation. He's the best player on the team. And if you look at that team and you look at some of the SEC teams that they are outperforming player for player, and Coastal Carolina is a great program, is championship program. They're a real deal program, but top to bottom, the talent is not what you see with these SEC teams. And yet 25 wins in a row. And here we are, June 16th, and they haven't stopped winning.
I mean, just along this catcher theme, I don't know that they're overperforming because of Caden Bodine, but he's there as one of their best players. I also think people should pay attention more to the Team USA selections. Really in all of this, I think Team USA had this evaluation correct. They identified him as last summer he was playing for them. And I think if you really want to put stock into something, put stock into who Team USA selects to be their primary guys. 'Cause I think they do a really good job of like isolating, like they have the selection of the best players in the country to want to play for Team USA, but then the guys that end up playing on those teams, like the backups of the backups of the backups on all these teams, all these Team USAs are who's of guys impacting the big leagues right now. Like Caden Bodine and Danny Enriquez was on Team USA from the University of Miami. Like Team USA is a really good operation and organization, especially from a projecting out of what's going to happen here. I think in the draft room, it comes up all the time. How did he do? Oh, he was on Team USA. Okay. Check that. Like, that's a good thing to mark. And like, how did he do on Team USA? Where was he hitting on Team USA? Because those teams end up being stacked.
Yeah, I'm curious who's going to be the catcher.
High school and college level.
By the way, you know, if we're projecting forward to the big Team USA, which is the World Baseball Classic, I know we're going to talk a lot about that in the buildup.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I mean, I kind of had Adley Rutschman circled.
Yep.
Right, underlined. Is Cal Raleigh the guy that's going to start a catcher for the Team USA?
You'd have a more uphill battle making an argument for Adley Rutschman today than for Cal Raleigh, but you also can make the argument that you could have both, and that's where Team USA gets really dangerous, right? Because you could have both, and maybe it's somebody else. Maybe it's Will Smith.
Yeah,
like, you know, all due respect to Adley Rutschman, he's one of the highest scouting reports I've ever filled out as an evaluator, but like Will Smith is a dude in the middle of that, you know, in the middle of that Dodgers success. And so like, shouldn't he get the hat tip? Right. But I think Cal Raleigh makes a compelling case this year.